I'm Yaya Hazuri from the International Customer Success team at McGraw-Hill. With a background in clinical practice, education, and health information technology, I'm dedicated to helping our international customers optimize their experience with McGraw-Hill. I'm thrilled to see such a diverse group of participants joining us from around the world today. So whether you're tuning in from home, your clinic, office, or somewhere else, I extend a warm welcome to each of you. In today's webinar, we'll explore innovative strategies and delve into the latest research, ingredients, and techniques for designing effective anti-aging skincare routines. With that said, it's my pleasure to introduce today's esteemed speaker, Dr. Leslie Baumann. Dr. Baumann is an internationally renowned board-certified dermatologist, researcher, skincare expert, best-selling author, and entrepreneur. In 1997, she founded and directed the first academic cosmetic dermatology research institute in the United States at the University of Miami, Miller School of Medicine. Under her leadership, the Cosmetic Dermatology Division gained international acclaim for pioneering research and development in the use of Botox and other toxins and dermal fillers for treating facial wrinkles. Dr. Baumann's landmark textbook, Cosmetic Dermatology, Principles and Practice, was first published in 2002 and is the first and best-selling textbook on cosmetic dermatology globally and has been translated into multiple languages. The third edition, now titled Baumann's Cosmetic Dermatology, was published by McGraw-Hill in July 2022. In addition to her contributions to academic research and literature, Dr. Baumann developed the Baumann skin typing system, which identifies 16 distinct skin types and is used by doctors worldwide to prescribe custom skincare routines. Her expertise in skin types and cosmeceutical ingredients has led to the widespread adoption of her skincare routine software by over 250 doctors in the United States. Dr. Baumann's insights on skincare trends reach a broad audience through her widely read blogs and her active LinkedIn account, where she continually updates her followers. We are honored to have Dr. Baumann with us today to share her unparalleled expertise in designing anti-aging skincare routines. Dr. Baumann, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody, and hello from Miami Beach. I'm going to share my slides now, but I wanted to just say hello in person here. And here we go. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about revolutionizing your approach to anti-aging. There's a lot of science here. So get your coffee and get ready, and here we go. And don't worry, all of this is also in the textbook. So you can always look up anything you don't understand in the textbook. So to start out, there are 16 different Baumann skin types, excuse me, and 8 of those need anti-aging skincare. The reason there are 8 different mature aging skin types is because there's other issues besides wrinkles. There's also dehydration and inflammation and pigmentation and oiliness. We're not going to be talking about any of those today. Today, we're going to focus on aging, and you'll see that that's a big topic. It's hard to even get through it in an hour. I'm going to talk a little bit about aging and skin, just the science of that, and then we're going to talk about the anti-aging strategies to combat that, what ingredients will do that, and then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about design, but we don't have a lot of time to go into design because there's so much interesting science to discuss. So let's start out at the basics. Cells. The cells we care about today are the keratinocytes and the fibroblasts, because those are the skin cells, and they have a cycle. They go through different stages of life. They start as stem cells, and they exhibit traits called stemness. Then they go through proliferation, and then they differentiate and start doing specialized things. Then they become senescent, the senescent cells, and then they go through apoptosis and die. So this whole process is what we're going to be trying to affect when we are trying to have effects on aging. So we're going to go through some of these different processes. But what we really care about right now is what are we going to put in the skincare regimen? These are the basic steps of a skincare regimen, and we're going to focus on what we do in these different steps to try to make these cells act younger. we're trying to push this cycle towards the left to the stemness proliferation phase. We'd rather the cells be in those phases than in the senescent phase. So all of our goals are to push this cycle to the left. So what happens is as cells move to the right and become senescent, they lose the ability to divide as they cycle through these different stages. They lose the ability to divide and to make a lot of good, important things that we need to stay young. And then they turn into senescent cells. Now, all the anti-aging focus these days seems to be on senescent cells. So I want to make sure you know what those are. They are still viable and functional cells, but they're very damaged. They have damaged mitochondria. If you look under the microscope, you'll see a lot of lipofuscin and heavy metals building up inside of the cells. And they assume this secretory phenotype called senescence-associated secretory phenotype, or SASP. And we're going to talk about that again in a minute. But these cells are absolutely related to aging. And a lot of studies that say that something major cells act younger or your skin younger, in those studies, they're tracking numbers of senescent cells and showing that they have decreased the number of senescent cells. So it's assumed that when you've decreased the number of senescent cells, you have improved aging. And this is the phenotype that these cells have. So the reason they're bad is they're like old cranky cells that are kind of just saying a lot of mean things, like, you know, like an old cranky person that, so they're causing problems around them. And what they're doing is the communication that they're giving are these pro-inflammatory cytokines. You might have heard about IL-11 in the news this week and all the interesting things about IL-11 and aging. It is a pro-inflammatory cytokine. So there's all kinds of pro-inflammatory cytokines that are released, and also extracellular vesicles that have RNA and microRNA and all these other things inside of them. And these are all bad signals that go to the cells around them and upset them and cause problems. And this crosstalk from senescent fibroblasts and keratinocytes is really a huge cause of aging. They call it inflammaging, which is inflammation that leads to aging. So what kind of factors cause senescence? Well, there's in chapter 5 of my textbook, I go into this in depth. I don't want to go through all the pathways here, but if you're interested in this, you can learn all about how these factors affect cellular senescence. But part of it is that the cells lose the ability to get rid of damaged mitochondria. So your mitochondria gets damaged and it starts doing all these bad things, and a healthy cell can get rid of that bad mitochondria. It's called autophagy. It eats itself, basically. But older senescent cells are not able to do that. So that's one of the big problems with cellular senescence. But what is the solution? The solution is this autophagy, getting these cells to self-digest and go away. They digest themselves with lysosomal degradation. So there's all kinds of things that are focusing on trying to increase autophagy so that you can decrease senescent cells. So that brings us to anti-aging strategy number 1. We want to increase autophagy and decrease senescent cells. So how are we going to do that? Well, most of the talk is on cosmeceuticals and diet and supplements. So these cosmeceuticals listed here are all ones that have been shown in the lab to stimulate autophagy. Exosomes are probably the one you've heard the most about, and we're going to talk about exosomes more in this lecture. Under diet and supplements, you probably have heard a lot about resveratrol, because that was one of the earliest ones that was looked at. And there's all kinds of research looking at resveratrol. And of course, caloric restriction was one of the first things that they did to start doing this. They found that if you limit your calories, you end up having more autophagy. And that the field is growing so quickly. So this is an exosome. An exosome is a sphere that contains a bunch of communicative molecules. And all kinds of important things that you've probably heard of already, of course, growth factors, cytokines, mitochondrial DNA, proteases. But because these are enveloped in this sphere, they're protected. So it's easier for them to get from one cell to another without getting broken down. And that's why exosomes are so popular right now in skincare. You'll see ones that come from platelets, some come from mesenchymal cells. There's all kinds of different sources. You have to think about where the exosomes are coming from. So if it's a plant-derived exosome, it's not going to help human skin because we don't need the same signals. We don't speak the same language as plants do. So a plant exosome is just as worthless in skincare as a plant-derived stem cell. So like apple-derived stem cells that used to be the rage in skincare, they weren't good for humans because we're not apples. So same thing with exosomes. You want human-derived exosomes, and the most popular ones are from umbilical cord blood and from platelets, and that you'll see on the market. So anti-aging strategy number 2, how do we make cells more productive? So what do I mean by that? Well, we want to increase the stemness. We want to make the cells go back to being young, where they're making lots of important products like collagen. So we're going to first talk about the stem cells in the epidermis. So in your epidermis, you have lots of different kinds of stem cells, but the ones we're going to talk about today are the LGR6 plus cells, and those are right below the sebaceous gland in the hair follicle. And we know that when you stimulate these LGR6 plus cells, that it will repopulate the epidermis with new keratinocytes. So this is why this is an important target. And how do we do this? Well, one big way that you hear about every day is microneedling. People who are doing microneedling are wounding their skin, and that is turning on those stem cells and causing them to make new keratinocytes. So wounding will do this. After the wound, neutrophils come to the area. They release something called defensins. So anything that causes the neutrophils to release defensins will do this. And then there's also a skincare product with a topical defensin that's a peptide that also will go and bind and turn on this stem cell. So this, if we have more productive keratinocytes, if we can turn them on, make more young stem-like keratinocytes, we'll have a thicker epidermis, our skin will be stronger, it's smoother, it's more radiant, and the color is improved. So a lot of anti-aging products will try to target the epidermis because of this. But if we want our skin to be less wrinkled and thicker, we really need to focus on the dermis, because these mesenchymal stem cells down in the dermis are very, very important when it comes to aging. Now, they're a little more confusing and not as straightforward as the stem cells in the epidermis. I put a study here for if you want to look it up, but there are basically mesenchymal stem cells in different parts of the dermis, in all 3 layers of the dermis. And these fibroblasts, they make all kinds of important things: collagen, elastin, hyaluronic acid, and heparin sulfate, which we're going to talk about in a minute. I like to think of heparin sulfate as a security guard. So that's why it looks like a security guard here. So when your keratinocytes and fibroblasts get old and cranky and become senescent, they quit working as well. So with your keratinocytes, if they're old, you're going to see decreased barrier function, decreased stem cell activity, slow keratinization, and slow wound healing. Your fibroblasts, you'll see decreased production of collagen, elastin, hyaluronic acid, and extracellular matrix compounds. So most of the anti-aging products that have been on the market up until now are trying to get these cells to make more stuff, make more collagen and elastin and things like that. A mature dermis is going to be a lot thinner. If you look on the left, that's what a young skin looks like. On the right, old skin, it doesn't have as much collagen and elastin and hyaluronic acid, so it's not as thick, it's not as strong, it doesn't have the same cushion and resiliency. So our goal is to stimulate these fibroblasts to make more proteins and glycosaminoglycans and collagen and other components. So let's talk a minute about the extracellular matrix. That's the area that is between the cells, and this microenvironment affects the activity of the fibroblasts. And it's so important that it has its own name. It's called the matrosome. So this area between the cells, the extracellular matrix, is also a target for anti-aging ingredients. And glycosaminoglycans are, there are many different kinds, but the two you hear about most are hyaluronic acid and heparin sulfate. So let's go into the details for a minute of one of the many, many reasons that the matrixome is so important. And this again is in the textbook and described in detail in the textbook. So this is a fibroblast, and it's attached to the black lines are the cytoskeleton. So the fibroblast attaches to the cytoskeleton, and when it pulls on it, it causes cell signals. So we're going to go through this a little closer. So if you look up close, you can see that the extracellular matrix is actually connected to the genomic DNA of the fibroblast with these mechanical relay points. So you see, first there's these focal adhesion points. That's where the fibroblast attaches to the cytoskeleton and to the extracellular matrix. And then you see the cytoskeleton, which attaches those focal adhesion points to what's called the link complex, those little green things. And then the little green things are attached to the nucleus skeleton, and then that pulls on the DNA and causes genes to do things. So that means when you have a mechanical force or pulling on the skin, that will actually affect the fibroblast making things. And this is why I don't know if you remember the study back from the 90s where they injected Restylane in the skin and showed that it made you make more collagen. It was the stretching of the skin when you injected filler that activated this. So anytime the skin is pulled and massaged and things like that, it can turn on the fibroblast, and the fibroblast can make more collagen. So when you lose glycosaminoglycans, the fibroblasts can't adhere to the tissue skeleton, and they get all compacted, and under the microscope, they look like this, kind of broken up and shorter and not attached. So the health of your extracellular matrix is very, very important. So if we want more productive fibroblasts and we want them to make more good stuff like collagen and other proteins, we can use exosomes in our skincare products, growth factors, hydroxy acids, peptides, retinoids. And this is why we do all those wounding procedures like lasers and peels and radiofrequency and microneedling. Now, this is old news. Alpha hydroxy acids have been around for a long time. They were some of the first anti-aging ingredients. But I just wanted to point out that you can see here that glycolic acid treatments are known to increase collagen and hyaluronic acid content of the skin. Many, many studies show us this. Retinoids, they've been around a long time too, but they are my favorite. I think they're still underrated. There's so many new things people prefer talking about, but retinoids are so important. They influence gene expression. So that they, when the retinoid acid receptors get turned on, then they turn on genes that turns on the production of collagen and hyaluronic acid. But at the same time, they turn off genes that make collagenase, which breaks down collagen, and matrix metalloproteinases. So retinoids turn on the genes you want and turn off the genes that you don't want. And this has been proven in so many studies. It's proven that retinol will do it just as well as tretinoin and tazarotene and adapalene. This is a picture that I like to show my patients because this is from a long time ago. This is from the 1980s, before we had Photoshop, before we had lasers. And this is a woman who used retinoids at 0.1% tretinoin for 26 months. That was the only intervention. You can see how peeled she is because it's such a strong dose, but look at the difference in her skin in 26 months. I think we forget to make our patients get on retinoids, and there's so much misinformation about retinoids. They're not exciting because they're not new, but I would like to encourage everybody to try to get their patients on retinoids because it really does make a difference. Excuse me. Ascorbic acid, vitamin C, that was invented by Sheldon Pennell, who was the chairman of dermatology at Duke University. I mean, he didn't invent vitamin C, but he figured out vitamin C played a very important role in aging. And this is because your body needs vitamin C to make collagen. So the more the more vitamin C you give your fibroblasts, the more collagen it'll make. So in this study, they put ascorbic acid in cell cultures of dermal fibroblasts and showed that it made the cells make more collagen. So we know for a fact that ascorbic acid makes you make more collagen. The problem is ascorbic acid doesn't get in the skin very well. It needs to be at a low pH. Okay, we also want to increase cell communication, because if cells can talk to each other better, they're going to be able to coordinate better to make all these important things. So how do we do that? We do that with growth factors. Exosomes have growth factors and other signals in them. And then we're going to talk about the role heparin sulfate plays in that. So all keratinocytes are unresponsive to cell signals, no matter what you're giving them, whether it's cytokines, interleukins, growth factors, that they just don't listen as well. Now, why do they not listen as well? One reason is there's a lot of junk that accumulates in the extracellular matrix between cells that impedes the process of these cell signals getting where they need to go. There's also enzymes and things in between the cells that will break down the cytokines and the growth factors. So getting the cell signal from one cell to another gets harder when you get older. So that's why they're unresponsive. So that's where heparin sulfate comes in. It's a security guard. So because growth factors, cytokines, and chemokines are so susceptible to degradation, they need to be protected because they have to get to their receptor, and they have to get to the right spot in the receptor so that they can bind to send their message. And they have trouble getting through all that junk between cells. So how do you get old cells to listen to growth factors? Well, you need heparin sulfate. So heparin sulfate surrounds the growth factors and signals, and it helps them get to their receptor and get to their target tissue. So it binds, stores, and presents these growth factors to the receptor. This protects them and allows them to make it to their target. And this is why heparin sulfate is a popular ingredient in anti-aging skincare. So the extracellular matrix, that's where all the junk builds up and all the garbage. So you not only do you have a bunch of toxins and heavy metals and things like that in the cells, but you also get broken up collagen, elastotic fibers, advanced glycation end products, and all of that clutters up the space between the cells. So how are we going to clean that out? The two things that you're seeing in skincare products today are called matrikines and peptides. So matrikines are peptides that come from the fragmentation of proteins. They have biologic activity. The ones you'll hear about in skincare products are tripeptides and hexapeptides. And if you notice, we're talking about the matrisome is the extracellular matrix, and these are matrikines that talk in that area. So they both have that same prefix matra, and that means the extracellular matrix. So tripeptide 1 is a peptide that's in skincare products, and it's known to be able to get in there and help remove damaged collagen, elastin, and all the other extracellular matrix components that are clogging up that space. This is why there are several serums on the market that you use on your patients for at least 2 weeks before you do something like laser resurfacing or microneedling. The reason you get a better result from those procedures is because you've cleaned out all this space and left space for new collagen. And that leads us to anti-aging strategy number 3 is how do we repair damage with skincare products? Well, DNA repair is very, very important. So in DNA repair, it takes out the mutated nucleotides and puts in new nucleotides. And you can see a lot goes into this. The DNA has to unwind, and then it has to take out the bad ones, put in the good ones, and wind back. And each one of those steps requires different enzymes. So there are many different types of DNA repair enzymes in skincare now that target different processes in this repair situation. But these require energy. And older skin cells don't have a lot of energy, and that's one of the reasons they don't repair DNA as well as younger people do. So that brings us to anti-aging strategy number 4. How are we going to increase cellular energy? Well, cells need ATP, and they need it to make these components we've been talking about, the collagen and the elastin, and the hyaluronic acid. We need the energy for protective mechanisms like building antioxidant functions and the different cell signals and all of that. And of course, you need cellular energy for repair, for DNA repair. And by the way, there is a circadian rhythm in your skin cells. So they're mostly devoted to protective mechanisms in the day and repair mechanisms at night. So when you design a skincare routine, you want to put the ingredients that are needed in protective mechanisms in the morning routine and ingredients that are needed in the repair mechanisms in the evening routine. So how are we going to increase cellular energy? Again, there's a lot of talk with two categories of cosmeceuticals and then diet and supplements. But with cosmeceuticals, the two most commonly used ones are coenzyme Q10, which is also called ubiquinone, and niacinamide. And niacinamide, people talk about it all the time. It's a very interesting ingredient. It does lots of things. It's anti-inflammatory. It helps prevent the melanosomes from transferring into the keratinocytes and bringing melanin. So it's a lightening ingredient, a soothing ingredient, but it also is very, very good at giving energy. And that happens in the NAD-NADH exchange. So niacinamide is a very versatile and important ingredient. Coenzyme Q10 is wonderful too, but it's hard to get it in topically sometimes, and it looks kind of yellow in the product. So more often you'll see people taking supplements of coenzyme Q10, and they need to do that in the morning because these kind of hype you up a little bit and have a caffeine effect. So you don't want to use these at night. The other ones that you're hearing a lot about are the NMNs, the nicotinamide mononucleotides. And there are many oral and IV versions coming out, and lots of studies looking at that. They look very, very interesting, and the way they work is by giving you energy. Lots of NAD products as well, the nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Again, the problem with some of these is getting them in topically. So when you design the skincare routine, you need to design it to maximize the chance of these absorbing into the skin. So there's lots of different categories of anti-aging ingredients. Anti-inflammatories help because we know inflammation leads to aging. Antioxidants help because we know free radicals lead to aging. We talked about the autophagy. We talked about cellular senescence. We talked about defensins and DNA repair enzymes and exosomes. Glycosaminoglycans, we talked about the importance of that. What we didn't talk about is that glycosaminoglycans bind a lot of water. So they're very strong humectants. So in addition to their other important functions that we talked about, they help the skin hold on to water and plump up the skin, and they have this immediate effect. And that is why hyaluronic acid is so popular in skincare routines, is because it really does give the skin this immediate effect because it plumps up the surface of the skin. But it doesn't really have a long-term anti-aging effect. So I'll hear consumers often saying that hyaluronic acid is the best anti-aging serum. It's really more of a temporary fix. It's not a long-term fix as much because it's really functioning with this humectant abilities is what's making you see the short-term change. But the other interesting thing about hyaluronic acid and most glycosaminoglycans is that they help other ingredients in the routine penetrate better into the skin. So let's say you have a patient with acne and you have them on retinoids and they're not tolerating their retinoids at all. They're peeling, they're getting retinoid dermatitis and they're red and you can't figure out what's going on. Well, maybe they're using a hyaluronic acid serum in their regimen right before the retinoid, and it's really making too much retinoid get in the skin because retinoids penetrate really easily into the skin. So that's an example of how a moisturizer can really matter in a regimen. And hyaluronic acid and glycerin are two humectants that really make other things absorb more. So keep your eye open for that. We talked about growth factors. There's so many different ones. We talked about peptides. I have a blog at skintypesolutions.com. If you go into the library, skintypesolutions.com/library, you can find a blog on peptides, and I've listed all the different kinds of peptides. There's so many and what they all do. But it's important for you to know that peptides are big. They're larger than the 500 Dalton size that penetrates in. So it's not very easy to get peptides in the skin. They stay on the surface and make the skin feel firmer. And that's why consumers like them. They think they look good right away. I like to think about it as fondant on a cake, where it just kind of smooths over the top layer of the skin. But it's not doing anything permanent in most cases. So peptides often are just a temporary fix, and when you wash your face, they come off and go away. Retinoids we talked about. Stem cells are really not as popular now that we know that it's really the exosomes that the stem cells release that are the important part, not the stem cells themselves. So it's moved more towards exosomes instead of stem cells. And of course, I have to mention sunscreen. Sunscreen is the most powerful and best anti-aging product on the market. And I think that people forget that. So all these different kinds of ingredients, and you can learn what each one of them does, but you've got to keep in mind that when you put them together in a skincare routine, they mix and they change. So you take two different ingredients that are completely benign or good, and you put them together, they can change into a dangerous third structure. So that's why it's so important to not only know what's in one product, but how many products together in the regimen are reacting with each other. And this interaction can affect the activity of the ingredients, how well they penetrate, just like I was talking about with hyaluronic acid, how well the other ingredients get into the skin. It affects solubility, the stability. So retinol, vitamin C, those are two things that are very unstable. They get oxidized very easily. So if you put a retinoid together with a benzoyl peroxide, then a benzoyl peroxide works by causing free radicals and causing oxidation. And retinol and ascorbic acid fall apart when they're oxidized. So you can see how those wouldn't work very well together if they're put on at the same time. And then that also affects efficacy. So each regimen step is important, and you need to think through each step whenever you're designing a skincare routine. And I think we undervalue cleansers a lot. Cleansers are so important, and because cleansers prepare the skin for what comes next. So if you use a low pH cleanser, like a hydroxy acid cleanser or a salicylic acid cleanser, you lower the pH of the skin, and that will affect what comes after it. So let's say we're talking about ascorbic acid, vitamin C. It needs a low pH to get into the skin. So if you use a low pH cleanser, like a glycolic acid first, and then you put on your vitamin C, it's going to penetrate better. However, if you think about a creamy cleanser, like any kind of creamy cleanser, those, or even a soap, a foaming soap like a bar soap, those have a very high pH. Those pHs can be 8 and 9 in some cases. So those will raise the pH of your skin. So if you use a creamy cleanser and then you follow that with an ascorbic acid, the ascorbic acid will not get in as well because the pH is higher. Now, your pH can also affect how well your sunscreen works. So your cleanser and moisturizer greatly affect your pH. So those are two things you need to think about. Also with cleansers, they affect how the barrier, the cells hold on to each other. They have all these proteins that make them hold on to each other. If you use an exfoliating cleanser with hot water and that has an acid in it, for example, the cells kind of loosen up, and that allows penetration of whatever follows. So the temperature of your water also affects penetration. So all these things need to be taken into account. I like to use the cleanser first, of course. Then I put the eye product on to protect the thin, delicate eye area. Then step 3, I use the most important product. I call it the treatment product, the one that is the most bang for your buck. Whether you're treating melasma, rosacea, acne, aging in this case, that is where that growth factor serum or that exosome serum or that vitamin C serum or your anti-redness serum, that goes in step 3. Then step 4 is your moisturizer, which may have hyaluronic acid in it to help penetration, but it probably has occlusives in it. Occlusives push things in. They call it online, they're calling that slugging now. They have the new generation has a new name for that. It slugs things into the skin, but basically the moisturizer pushes the treatment product in, and then you put your sunscreen on top. At night, I like to use the retinoid last because this is a starter regimen, and retinoids get in really easily. And then as they get used to their retinoid, I'll move it farther up into step 4. I'll usually do treatment product, retinoid, moisturizer at night. So each routine step is important. Now in my textbook, I go through each one of these product types in its own chapter. So I have a whole chapter on cleansers, a whole chapter on moisturizers. Under treatment products, I have a whole chapter on acne and a whole chapter on aging. So there's so much more to know than what I just told you, but at least this gives you an idea, and you know where to look. So if you have any more questions, I finished a little early, so we have a lot more time for question and answers. But you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm always posting new studies. Like this week, there was the study where they blocked interleukin 11 in mice and extended their longevity by, I think it was 25%. So the mice would live 25% longer just with this one, in just with IL-11 blocked. There's actually IL-11 drugs already on the market. So this is a very exciting space to learn about that. But those are the types of things that I put on my LinkedIn. I also follow all the social media, TikTok and all of that, to see what people are talking about. And I'll write a blog on that. So a couple of weeks ago, people were talking about beef fat and how beef fat was so great for your skin. And so I debunked that and put that on LinkedIn. And I do that to try to help you get the right message out, because there's so much inaccurate information. It's just sad that what people are using and buying it on their skin and making their skin worse. And it's because they're getting all this information from people who really don't understand the science. So I try to help give you the science so that you can help spread the word of what really works. If you like videos and you love learning things like this, my YouTube channel, I post videos all the time, little short ones and also real long ones, and some sciencey ones and some more consumer ones, but they're all meant to be educational. And then in my library, skintypesolutions.com library, you can look up any topic and find a blog. And if you can't find what you're looking for, please DM me on LinkedIn. I'm always looking for new topics to write about, or if you see a new ingredient and you want to know if it's good, let me know. Speaking of ingredients, I have another textbook by McGraw-Hill called Cosmeceuticals and Cosmetic Ingredients, and that is 25 years of work of looking at the data and studies of each one of these ingredients, and really going through the animal trials and the human trials and the topical use and the oral use, and helping explain to you exactly why we say, for example, that vitamin C is good for your skin. There's so many reasons, and I go through all the data and show you. So we're going to open it up for questions, and I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope that you'll come check out the new Baumann's Cosmetic Dermatology. I put lots of love into it. My favorite chapter is the anti-aging ingredient chapter, but to understand that, you really should read chapter 5 and 6 first, which talk about intrinsic aging and extrinsic aging. So you kind of have the background science. It's a little bit of what we covered today. And then go read the anti-aging ingredients, because I debunk a lot of myths in that chapter. So thank you very much, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leslie Baumann. That was a huge amount of valuable information to all of us, I'm sure. Just to reiterate what Dr. Baumann said and highlight that both textbooks by Dr. Baumann are available and fully searchable on Access Dermatology Diagnosis and Treatment. Many of you will be familiar with this platform and already using it. So you can find these textbooks under the books section. Baumann's Cosmetic Dermatology in its 3rd edition is found under the Cosmetic Dermatology section. And the other book, Cosmeceuticals and Cosmetic Ingredients, under cosmeceuticals. Of course, these books feature expert guidance on the effectiveness of skincare routines and products. And they are invaluable resources for physicians and anyone looking to deepen their knowledge on skincare, cosmeceuticals, and more. With that, I would like to open the floor for your questions. Please feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A box, and let's continue this super insightful conversation with Dr. Baumann today. So I see some questions already coming in. Dr. Baumann, there's a question asking about the red light or infrared lights and how they would help with wrinkles, and if there are any side effects or precautions that need to be taken.
That is a really great question, because in the United States, people are buying these red light masks. And a patient asked me at least once a day about these red light masks. There are a few studies that show that red light does do some good beneficial things for anti-aging, some of the effects that it has on the cells. But we also know that light causes aging. So any kind of light or radiation is actually going to age the skin. Another big question I get asked that's similar is infrared. So people will go to these infrared saunas all the time. We know infrared helps your skin heal after like exercise and things like that. But infrared is also a form of radiation, heat, and it'll age you. And there's proof that infrared will age you too. So I personally am not a fan of any of the light therapies or the heat therapies for a long term. Now, I do love things like Ulthera to shorten the collagen as a one-time treatment. But as far as using light every day on your face, I'm not a believer in that. Also, the blue light from your phone and from your computer can also age your skin. So you need to encourage your patients to wear sunscreen every day, even if they're not outside, because the blue and red lights from the phone can also age your skin.
Exciting. Okay, another question asking about combining growth factors and vitamin C serum and peptides, and if that would bring a better effect.
Would combining growth factors, peptides, and vitamin C give a better effect? Well, first of all, this is where we go into the different skin types. There's 16 different Baumann skin types, and each one needs different ingredients. So what I like about vitamin C would be for a Baumann skin type that also has pigmentation issues and aging, but isn't rosacea prone, doesn't have any stinging. Because vitamin C is a low pH, it can irritate some sensitive skin types. So the regimen you talked about would probably be best for the dry, resistant, not pigmented, wrinkle-prone types, which is Baumann skin type 15, for example. So yes, you want to combine all these different ingredients. They don't have to be in one product. They can be in the overall routine. In the scenario that you asked about, I would put the vitamin C on first, and I would put the growth factor at the other time of the regimen. So I would do vitamin C as step 3 in the morning and the growth factor as step 3 at night in that situation. And peptides, by the way, I forgot to mention, they don't play well in the sandbox with other ingredients. They like to inactivate other ingredients. So you're better off really putting your peptide on as a separate product than mixing it into the same product, because they inactivate other things. So if you're going to use a peptide and a growth factor together, you don't want them in the same cream. It's better if they're in separate creams.
It's just interesting how the order in which you put these ingredients may have a different effect, and with all the 16 different skin types. That's really interesting. Another question asking about the role of caffeine in the skin aging process.
Caffeine is such an interesting ingredient, whether we're talking about topically or orally. It's an antioxidant for sure, so it's very, very good for that. But there's lots of good antioxidants. What makes caffeine so interesting is that it causes vasoconstriction. So if you're having rosacea flushing, or other kinds of redness on the face from just sensitivities, caffeine is really, really great. I love to use it in my rosacea patients. And a lot of rosacea patients are over 50 and need anti-aging. So those would be the sensitive, wrinkle-prone types. And so I like to use caffeine in my sensitive, wrinkle-prone type skincare regimens.
And more caffeine then. Um, can you please suggest good brands for vitamin C, growth factors, and sunscreen in India?
I don't know what brands you have in India, but I do know that our skintypesolutions.com site can ship anywhere in the world. But vitamin C, the most of the data is from SkinCeuticals. So SkinCeuticals is a great vitamin C brand. I know you have that in India. They have many different serums with vitamin C, and you would pick which one based on what the Baumann skin type is. Growth factors, really SkinMedic is the leader, and Neocutis have the best growth factor serums. Both of those are coming from cultured fibroblasts made in cell culture media. So those are both wonderful growth factors. Let's see, what else was it? It was vitamin C, growth factor, sunscreen. Yeah, sunscreen. Yeah, there's a new brand in America that I love called Pavese. Just so you know, in America, we are kind of behind in sunscreens because our FDA doesn't allow a lot of products to the market. So here, we like to use mineral sunscreens instead of chemical mostly, because there's a lot of fear of the sunscreens hurting the marine life and the reefs, and also just absorbing chemical sunscreens in your body. We know that chemical sunscreens can be excreted in your urine. So in America, there's a tendency to use the physical mineral zinc oxide sunscreens. And of those, my favorites are a new brand called Pavese, which has diamonds in it. And the little diamonds bind to zinc and they reflect the light away. And the other one that is wonderful, that's just won some awards, is Rationale Skincare out of Australia. I don't know if you guys have that in India. They have one version called Beautiful Skin that comes in 6 colors so that the tints will match, because that's another problem with tinted sunscreens is they don't really match. Elta MD is a really great brand. Elastin has really great sunscreens. Color eScience has a good sunscreen for darker skin types. And then of course the La Roche-Posay's and the SkinCeuticals have good sunscreens. And then what was the last thing you asked about this after sunscreen?
No, these were the 3: the vitamin C, the sunscreen, and one more. I lost that 1 second.
And if it was moisturizer, my favorite moisturizer is made in South Korea. And it's called Zerafite, Zerafite. And it has very good barrier repair. And if you look at a cream, a barrier repair cream under a cross-polarized microscope, you can see if it has the right pattern or not. So your skin barrier, if you think about it as puzzle pieces that come together, they have to come together perfectly to make that barrier tight. If they're not together all the way, the barrier isn't tight. So that pattern of a very strong structure is called the Maltese cross pattern. I wrote a blog on it if you want to go read about the Maltese cross pattern. So if you look under a microscope at these different creams, the ones that have the strongest Maltese cross pattern are the best. And of those, really, Zerafite and Mediture are the 2 best Maltese cross patterns that you'll see. And they both were made by Dr. Yum out of South Korea, who's one of the best barrier repair scientists.
Wow, that's great information to know about moisturizers. Okay, a lot of questions still coming in. Somebody asked about the dosages of the ingredients when you were discussing the slide that had all the different ingredients, the anti-inflammatories, and so the recommended dosages for an effective skincare.
Great question, but it's too hard of an answer because it depends on which of the 16 Baumann skin types you are, what kind of sub-sensitivity they have. So a sensitive skin type in my typing system, there are 4 sub-sensitive types. There's acne, rosacea, stinging, and allergic. So really, if you think about it that way, 40 different skin types, there's 40,000 different regimen templates when you think of all the things. So I'd be having to give you 40,000 answers to the question, which I can't. But thank goodness for AI. It really has helped us so much with the software of figuring out answers like that. but it would, again, depend on what the underlying things you're treating. I call those your barriers to skin health, which is dehydration, inflammation, pigmentation, and aging. It's which of those barriers to skin health you're treating would tell you which of those ingredients you need and what percents you need of those.
Perfect. Dr. Baumann, what are your thoughts on snail serum products and carbon laser facials?
Carbon laser facials I'll do first. I don't really know what I think about that yet. I've looked into it and I don't have much of an opinion, so I can't give you a good answer on that. I'm a little perplexed as to why those are supposed to work unless it's just through wounding the skin. And if it's through wounding the skin, then you saw in my lecture, it has to do with defensins. But that I don't understand the science as well. The snail mucin is interesting, but it's not as good as retinoids. That's a perfect example of something that does a few of these anti-aging things, but it's not nearly as strong as a lot of the other things we have on the market, like retinoids. And I see that a lot of young people that are watching TikTok are using snail mucin, and young people under 50 don't need this technology. I'm not saying they don't need anti-aging, but they don't need the technology that the snail mucin does. So I have a whole blog on snail mucin at skintechsolutions.com if you want to read all the different things about snail mucin.
Thank you for your input. A similar question on your insights on oral collagen.
I'm sorry, so ask that question again.
Somebody's also asking about your insights on oral collagen.
Okay. Oral collagen. Well, we make our collagen, you have to have vitamin C to make collagen. So first of all, oral vitamin C is much more important than oral collagen because you need to be able to make your own. Studies show in the anti-aging ingredient chapter of my textbook, I go through all the studies of the oral collagens and tell you exactly what those studies showed and if they're statistically significant. So take a look at that chapter. But for the most part, what those studies showed is if you take a large amount of oral collagen orally, your skin will be a little bit more hydrated. So you have to think about, is it worth the expense when you could just use a moisturizer? Now, with that said, I know that collagen is very popular and your patients are going to be asking you about that. A lot of people are doing it. So I've talked to a lot of different nutritionists about if you really want oral collagen, what's the best way? And it looks like homemade beef broth and fish broth. Fish bones have a lot, fish broth has a lot of collagen in it. So from what the nutritionists have been telling me, you really want your own beef broth and your own fish broth is really the best way to increase collagen instead of buying all those expensive collagen supplements.
Oh, wow. So since you touched on this, there was a question as well on the dietary regimens that would help improve skin health.
Well, most likely, grandmothers always said eat all the colors of the rainbows, and they're right, because you want all the different kinds of antioxidants. So fruits and vegetables are very, very important because of all the vitamins and the antioxidants that they have. We know the cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower and bok choy and Brussels sprouts have a special extract in it. I'm blanking on the name right now, but it is known to help improve your epigenetics. Epigenetics is something I didn't have time to talk about in this lecture, but it's so fascinating. But epigenetics are, if you think about your genes, it's the top of your gene. There are these little methyl groups. I like to think of them as little hats on top of the gene. And the presence or absence of those hats determine if your cells act old or new. So these cruciferous vegetables can affect that and make your skin cells act younger. So that's important as well. I think diet and food is a medicine and food is very important, but it looks like you just need a varied diet. Now, with that said, I have a lot of vegan patients, and I noticed that they have a tendency to have more dry skin because they're not getting as many saturated fatty acids in their diet. So I like to put my vegan patients on flaxseed oil, and so that they're getting more omega-3 fatty acids in their diet, and that makes a big difference with their skin hydration. So I think I covered everything. Of course, vegetarians are going to be getting more vitamins than people who just eat meat. And so that's good. But we also know that you need protein too. So all the things that you're hearing out there in the nutrition world are also true in the anti-aging world.
So in summary, a well-balanced nutrition would help with a healthy skin.
Absolutely. I mean, you eat all of the fruits and vegetables that you can. It affects your microbiome, and your microbiome greatly affects your skin. So things like rosacea and other forms of sensitive skin, they will most likely get better when your diet gets better. I see that happen with my patients all the time. And I didn't talk about sugar at all in my talk, because I think we all know sugar ages us and causes glycation. But for sure, lowering the sugar in your diet is going to slow aging. We know diabetics have a higher glucose level, and so they age faster. That's absolutely proven. So all these new drugs that people are taking, the GLP-1 agonists that are lowering your blood sugar, are actually probably having a good anti-aging effect. And everyone's talks about, oh, the Ozempic face, am I going to look old if I use it? I'm seeing my patients look younger when they use it. Like the texture of their skin looks younger, and I think it's because of the less glycation. And since I'm off on talking about glycation, there are many products that are called like anti-glycation creams. Those don't work. You can't get rid of glycation once it happens. Those just have antioxidants in them. So you don't think that by putting an anti-glycation cream on your skin, you're going to be getting rid of glycation. You need to prevent it in the first place.
Wonderful. I think we're going to take one last question. So there's an interesting question asking if heat can damage and age the skin, how does the laser therapy help with aging?
Oh, I love that. What a great question to end on. Okay, I'm going to say something. I'm going to end on a controversial note. I believe I can beat any anti-aging laser with topical skincare for that exact reason, because heat does damage your skin. Absolutely. It causes inflammation. It causes all kinds of different issues. So if there were two identical twin patients and one of them got CO2 laser with somebody and the other one used products like retinoids and a whole regimen with me for 1 year, at the end of the year, I know my patient will look just as good as the laser patient. The problem is that requires a correct custom regimen and consistency. The patient has to use it every day, and patients aren't good about that. Laser, they come in, they do it once, and they're fixed. So it's really more about patient compliance. But yes, I am, of course, vascular lasers. I'm not talking about that because we need to be able to, with rosacea, get rid of the redness. I'm talking about the CO2, erbium, Fraxel, those, and radio frequency things. I'm not a fan of all the heat for that reason. And we know that heat, not only does it age you, but it causes pigmentation. So I'm in Miami, and I will not treat a melasma patient with light or laser here. Maybe different people in an area that don't have as much sun and heat, but in Miami, if you do that, they're going to get better for a month and get a lot worse 3 months later. So we use here oral tranexamic acid to treat melasma, and a good topical regimen instead of heat and lasers. So thank you for that great last question, because you don't need to go buy a $100,000 laser. You just need to educate your patients, give them the right skincare for their skin type, and make sure they use it, make sure they're compliant. That's your most important thing. And I explained to you, there's a chapter in the book all about how to know what skincare products to sell in your practice, how to design a regimen, how to retail in your practice, because it's, there's lots of little tricks I've learned over the years. We have 250 doctors using my software, and we mentor them on selling skincare. So all of that is in the book. It explains it all to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baumann. This has been enlightening. And thank you all for your fantastic questions. So as we bring this webinar to a close, I want to extend our profound gratitude to you, Dr. Leslie Baumann, for generously sharing your wealth of knowledge and expertise with us today. In fact, I personally have learned a lot. I'm going to change a lot with my skincare routine starting today. To our wonderful attendees, thank you for your active participation. We greatly value your feedback, so please take a moment to complete the survey by scanning the QR code you're seeing on the screen right now. Your insights help us improve future sessions. I'll leave this for a moment for you to scan. And again, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Baumann. So for everyone, we look forward to welcoming you in our future webinars. Until then, keep exploring and never stop your journey of discovery. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your days.
And I'll see you on LinkedIn. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Baumann. Bye-bye.